Two of my favourite conferences that I've ever attended were How to Grow Good People and Happiness and Its Causes. And both of those were attended by the Dalai Lama, and they really left a mark on me, an indelible mark that helped me create a vision for a city that at the time when I started was probably a little bit ordinary in terms of its outlook and how it looked. And now the sense of pride and the sense of optimism in our community is the best it's ever been, even in amongst everything that's going on worldwide.
And Guy, what makes you optimistic?
Well, Victor, you know, that's a different answer with every breath I take. I seem to find that I was thinking this morning, are you going to hold it together? Because you're like that excited child and you're watching them going everywhere. Absolutely everything makes me optimistic, Victor. I think I'm just a bundle of optimism. But today, it's just knowing that the days are longer, that spring's here, that the flowers and blossom are coming out. I'm really optimistic that tomorrow's a minute and a half, 2 minutes longer. I love it.
Good question. I also have 3 young children as well. So, you know, family and the future for my family and my children and their generations to come is what I certainly believe. The work that I do today and the impact and the legacy that leaves for our future generation is what I believe in, optimism and innovation that goes with that as well.
People who make positive change, like Anna and Guy and Kelly, they're making a great contribution to society, and that's uplifting people, and that's what we need in Australia today. But we've always had it. It's just a matter of groups like this getting together more and more and making that change and instilling it in the younger generations.
The collective wisdom and the collective insights that doing activities like this and doing the festival really have, you know, reinvigorated me. I'm an extrovert, and so I need to be with people and I need to exchange ideas. So that optimism that, yes, like spring, we're emerging out of something. And I think, you know, we're coming back into our humanity. And for me, it's looking about how humanity shapes technology. So, you know, it's great to be able to be with like-minded people and keep pursuing these, a society we want.
That is one of the great habits of the optimist. When I asked Bill George, you know, the author of True North, you know, that great business book, I asked him what makes him optimistic. It was exactly the same as you. He said, being surrounded by positive people, what a blessing. And that's
yes,
the
indeed.
guru of leadership.
You always make me optimistic, Victor. But
I want to know something else.
Absolutely. But look, I think all of the experiences I've had with various people through COVID and the resilience of people that are around, everyone's finding it tough and finding different experiences. But by and large, I think the resilience and the positivity in the way that people have really reached out to help people in this difficult time rather than sort of cocoon by and large, I think has been really, really enlightening and certainly generating a lot of optimism. So that's certainly for me at the moment, and being president of a soccer club. And
I think being in Victoria, you know, you're all aware of our lockdown here. I think what makes me optimistic is that by and large, people have done the right thing and we're pulling together as a community, which is very important. And I think going forward, we'll pull it together and we'll manage, and our economy will somehow right itself. I know there's a lot of doom and gloom about that, but I'm optimistic that everyone works hard, we'll pull through.
Look, it's just the ability to follow passion for me. And I think we all, you know, have passions, but often we invest in activities or people or things that aren't necessarily aligned with those passions. And for me, it comes down to, yeah, absolutely being able to, you know, really express that passion authentically.
Optimism is probably one of the things that keeps people going. I was kind of preparing to talk about micro-credentials, but you put me into a different position. So let's talk about optimism instead. I'm in Melbourne at the moment, and I just heard that they're extending the lockdown for another 2 weeks, which is annoying because we've been in it for 4 weeks. And I've already been planning, and not just me, other people have been planning what they're going to do when it finishes, because it was meant to finish on the 14th. Now it's finishing on the 28th. So there's 2 more weeks of lockdown. You know how bad it is. It's just, you can't go outside, you can't do anything. It is really annoying. So just this morning, I came late because I'm doing another course in Ericksonian therapy, and I had a very interesting session in that course this morning about, well, we're doing our own self-therapy, but basically it turned out to be very useful for me because I now know what I can do in these next 2 weeks. So it keeps me optimistic. Whatever comes as bad, you just turn it into something that you can use for some purpose. So I have another 2 weeks of doing something new. Sometimes you don't see what the situation can be positive in, really, but being in the lockdown, I have spent a lot of time learning new stuff. I have spent a lot of time doing cooking. I have joined a group that does food rescues. So we actually deliver foods to people who cook for the homeless and stuff like that. It's really, you wouldn't normally think of doing that. I have no car at the moment, so I cycle everywhere, and you have 1 hour a day. This is how bad it is. You can go out for 1 hour for exercise. So I make the most of it. I do 1 hour cycling most days. I go to places, either I go pick up food, or I go deliver, or I go and see my daughters that live just on that, you can only go 5 kilometers. That is bad as well, because they're just a little bit further. So we have to meet. They go for a walk, I go for a bike ride. So it's really great. I'm telling you, this lockdown is fabulous.
And what makes me optimistic, there's been a lot of sort of reference to kind of collaboration and sort of humanity, but and whilst I also agree on all of what was said there, I also think technology makes me very optimistic because it empowers us to tackle global problems on a global scale, and because of course technology operates at that level, it gives us an incredible sort of outreach and an ability to really change the world on that sort of on that scale. So ironically, although I also work in the ethics of tech, which is looking at the darker sides and the risks of technology and where technology can go wrong, I think combined with the optimism and the humanity of who and what we are as human beings, augmented by technology, I think will make the world in the future an even more wonderful and remarkable place, so long as it's ethical. We need to install ethical thinking into the entire technological domain, and I think if we do that, then we've got a very good chance at creating what you might call a utopia. But
yeah, well, I'm naturally an optimistic person anyway, so that's so just generally optimistic about life. So that probably helps. But in terms of my business and what I've been doing for nearly 20 years, obviously COVID, the whole thing, like everybody, and I was listening to what Prashil said, everyone's had to change what they're doing. And I remember when I was so I do a lot. I do live in Wodonga, but I work in Melbourne a lot, particularly in local government. So I remember when I came back from doing some work at a council, came back here, drove back here, and then a lockdown happened. It was like, well, the restrictions happened, and it was like, what am I going to do? And I was thinking, I remember the thought going through, oh, this is going to be hard. How am I going to do this? Like, can I shift things to online? And I remember thinking a week and thinking, oh, geez, I don't know if I'm up for this. As you can see, I'm an old bloke. And then I had one of my clients ring up and say, are you going to move your stuff online? And I went, yeah, of course. And then it was like crazy for, you know, a couple of weeks of moving everything online, which I was able to do. And now I look back, and what was, you know, looking pretty difficult is now a lot easier. And I actually ran a webinar yesterday for the Business Wodonga, actually, and I made the point then that what has actually happened really is it's opened up for regional businesses, has opened up, I actually made the point, it's opened up the state, it's opened up Australia, it's opened up the world. So for people now sitting here doing stuff online like I am, it's like, well, actually, don't just worry about, you know, regional. You can think about state, you can think Australia, you can think the world. So
empathy.
Oh, empathy.
Yeah, I think it's a complex question. I think where society generally, particularly online, everyone's kind of geared towards pessimism. And I think if this was a forum of complaining about what was wrong with everything, you know, we might see some different numbers. I think it's really refreshing to see a group of people talking about the positive side. And I think you have to have a dose of questions. You know, it can't all be sunshine and roses. But I think people who, Costa Georgiadis, the gardening guy, he epitomizes that for me, optimism. He has a glow about him and a magnetism. And I think if we can tap into that side of ourselves more through our businesses, through our relationships, through that empathy, and he has amazing empathy. I met him when he was in Albury, and it was just this old soul with a warm glow and on the front foot in a positive way. I thought, you know, everyone could learn from a guy like this. I think he encapsulates optimism. That person like Costa, I don't know if some of you may not know Costa, but he's the guy with the massive beard, the black hair. Is a real character. Yeah, I think empathy, I think having the capacity to connect with others from their point of view and reflect their needs. I think that's a big part of it for me.
This is the times when optimistic leadership is so important. When all around them, you know, the classic saying, when all around you are losing your heads, it's best to keep yours. And I think that's optimism helps leadership do that. And I'm pleased to say that, you know, there's a lot of positivity we've managed to inject and get back as a new committee on the back of that. So there's not many opportunities where you get to influence the lives of, you know, better part of 500 kids. And that's the way I see our job as a board.
As we opened AWISE2020, the launch event, the Albury-Wodonga Innovation Summit and Expo 2020, we welcomed Guy Rowson, the founder and creator of the event.
Traditionally, we would acknowledge and thank the elders past and present from the local area, but this year we're online and people are connecting from many different regions and lands. And as such, I'd like to acknowledge the elders past and present from whenever and wherever they hail. We wouldn't be here today without them. I'd also like to thank our generous sponsors and supporters for the event. Without supporters, events like AWISE just couldn't happen. And a special thanks to our major sponsor, Digital Innovation Futures Victoria, or DIF, and we've got Kelly and Margot representing them here today. I'd also, we customarily acknowledge and thank our dignitaries for their attendance, and I know we have some in our midst, but today I would really like to thank each and every one of you for giving up your time to attend the launch to support our vision of an optimistic and innovation future for all. So today we're here to launch the AWISE Innovation Summit, and to help us officially open it, I'd like to invite the Mayor of Wodonga, Anna Speedie, to say a few words.
Thank you, and thank you everybody. It's lovely to be here. Welcome to Wodonga if you're visiting from afar. Just been nominated the most sought after local government area that people want to live in the nation. So we're pretty proud of that, and I think it comes from so many things. It comes from a terrific optimistic vision that has been driven and actioned by our people. And it takes people to actually get behind those things and make them happen. So Guy, to you and your team, to Victor and everybody else, Kelly, please thank you, because this stuff is really important. It's important that we keep looking forward, and it's important that we keep looking forward for new ways that will make regions in particular stronger, better places to live, and provide something pretty unique for our people. I attended two of my favourite conferences that I've ever attended were How to Grow Good People and Happiness and Its Causes. And both of those were attended by the Dalai Lama, and they really left a mark on me, an indelible mark that helped me create a vision for a city that at the time when I started was probably a little bit ordinary in terms of its outlook and how it looked. And now the sense of pride and the sense of optimism in our community is the best it's ever been, even in amongst everything that's going on worldwide. So thank you again, Guy, for putting this on and organising it and continuing with your commitment for not only your business, but the wider business community. So it's going to be a good event, I know, because already the chats today have been sensational and have started on such a fantastic note. So spring has sprung, let's get creative.
All right, thank you very much, Anna. We didn't have a virtual ribbon to cut. Victor was keen for Anna to find a ribbon, and then I suggested maybe we could get an old mask to cut, because we'd all love that, but we're not quite at that stage yet. And we're really grateful in our region for the fact that we're not as hardly done by as those in Melbourne. So thanks to all of you that are joining us from Melbourne, and we hope this gives you a little bit of inspiration to see the light at the end of the tunnel. All right, so we are here to launch the Innovation Summit. So I'll get the death by PowerPoint over and done with, just to share with you what's happening before we do welcome our special guest hosts to talk to us about optimism. So the Innovation Summit, what is it? The Innovation Summit is an annual event we've been running in the northeast of Victoria. It started in 2017 in partnership with the Benalla Rural City Council, a very forward-thinking and dynamo of the region, Catherine McMillan, which some of you will know. I don't think she's present today, but I greatly appreciate her taking the first step on that journey. For the last 2 years, in 2018 and 19, the event was run in Wodonga. And each year we've shared a fantastic one day of some keynote speakers, an expo showing the latest and greatest in digital and technology that we could find from the region, as well as anyone else from Australia who's willing to come and show off what they're doing. And then followed by some workshops in the afternoon. Last year, we were lucky enough to have a bit more time and a bit more fun, and we ran WISE Up, which was a youth innovation summit, where we brought together a few busloads of secondary school students from around the region to come in and hear from some young professionals. Sadly, due to the nature of COVID and the lockdowns, that element's not happening, but the show must go on. So this year we've adapted, and it's always been my vision that we would have a wise world, and hence the URL, a wiser world. Digital literacy, you know, is falling behind the rest of the world. So I'm actually pleased in a way that this has occurred, because it's forced me to turn this into an ongoing conversation. So I'll just share with you now a little bit about innovation today in Australia from a global stage perspective. I think this is critical to the reason why innovation is important. There are many rankings, but one of them is an international Bloomberg index that looks very clearly at what's going on. Now, innovation throughout the world is dominated by Europe and Asia. Australia is hovering around 20th in the world when it comes to innovation. But if you look at the screen, you'll see we're slipping in that innovation footprint. And you'll also see that our colleagues across the water in New Zealand are also slipping. It's not that we're getting worse, it's just the rest of the world is improving faster than us. So I think we're resting on our laurels, not all of us, because we're all here for the conversation, and we need to find a way to step up and advance what we're doing with respect to innovation. So I just want to quickly run through what to expect. Today's just a launch, a conversation, and to come together where shortly Victor will share a vision of optimism, and with our guests, Anna and Prashil, and the rest of you, in fact, we'll have a discussion around the connection between optimism and innovation. So on your screen now, you'll see a list of the events that are coming up. Starting from the 17th of September, we'll be looking at really tactile, practical ways to help share what's happening in the world of innovation and how people can be adopting it within their business or having their eyes on the future. So 17th of September, we've got Growing Your Business Online. James Hunter, who is a resident of the King Valley, just down the highway, launched his own business, Hunter Brothers Cycles, after decades of helping the big brands like Country Road and Dryserbone and Gazman create the icons that they are today. On the 24th of September, the NBN is coming together with a couple of partners to deliver a session on why digital matters more than ever for your business. So how to leverage digital. The 1st of October, micro learning in the modern workplace. We have David from CodeSafe and Prashil Singh, who's here with us today, both of them. They will be talking about how learning is a continuous process and the tools available to learn on the job or to take those short courses, not just think about doing an MBA or undertaking months and months of arduous learning. On the 8th of October, we have emerging uses of AI in business, and we have a couple of great people. Sorry? We have a couple of great people coming together there. Henry Dobson, who didn't quite make it last year. He's an expert in AI and ethics. He'll be leading that conversation for us and discussing what's emerging in the use of AI, as well as sharing his view on technology ethics and how to manage that. The all-important cybersecurity for business, we've all heard of it. We've heard of Zoom bombing. We've left ourselves open for that this year because anyone can walk into our virtual town hall today and join the conversation. So that's another great topic I think that's important to all businesses. Rolling on, the future of robots in the workplace. Thank you, Nikki, who's with us today from ExactTech. Nikki's going to be talking about how robots are being used more and more, particularly for telepresence and helping those that are disadvantaged that can't attend work. Nikki, we had a little video of you from last year talking about how you were helping people who couldn't attend school. Imagine if you'd had an order for every child that couldn't attend school this year. 5th of November, emerging opportunities in IoT, or the Internet of Things. For the 4th year running, Triple NCO, the National Narrowband Network, will be joining us to share what's happening there around smart cities, smart utilities and smart agriculture, but trying to keep it in a practical sense for how it might impact smaller and regional businesses. 12th of November, running a business in the cloud. Well, we're already all sort of doing it, but I suppose it's like saying how to maintain your car. Most of us might know where to check the dipstick, but a few tips and tricks on how to keep things running smoothly, and a little bit about, the options you've got available. And last but not least, in the ones that we've got organised, leveraging automation in your business. There's some really great technologies coming out to help automate processes and help small businesses cut or streamline red tape, the things that they hate doing, the submitting of forms, all those sorts of things. So that's a quick summary of the lineup of what we've got coming up. Happy to answer any questions on or offline with respect to the program. We will be sharing that via the website and via other social channels. And now, with the red tape and the death by PowerPoint out of the way, I would like to welcome our special guest Victor Perton to talk about the why and the how of optimism.
Look, it's fantastic. And Anna, that was just such an effervescent speech to open this wonderful festival. And Guy, you are such a power. I was there last year physically, and the spirit you have there, you know, whether it's our friends with robotics and local government and the school kids, it was absolutely fantastic in real life. And now it's absolutely fantastic in virtual. So look, we opened up with some music from the Black Super group, August Green, Optimistic. And if ever you want to be inspired in the morning, it's a great way to start. But optimism in general is a great way to start. And I just want to take you to some of the collection we've made on the combination of optimism and innovation. And Peter Riddles, who's probably Australia's preeminent expert on innovation and optimism, innovation. He's on the Californian Innovation Board, the Swedish Innovation Board, the Manitoba. He's on the board of CSIRO. If you look at the top right there, Peter says, optimism and innovation are virtually connected, each becoming the motivation for the other. And those who were in Bendigo this week for the Bendigo Innovation Festival, Simon Edgerton there under Peter is a star there. And it's a really simple phrase. Be optimistic. It frees the mind and nourishes the soul of innovation. And then something you'll find unusual. We don't normally think of public servants as particularly optimistic or innovative. But there's Martin Parkinson, who for many years was the preeminent public servant in Australia. He was the leader of our G20 effort. Look at that. Optimism drives curiosity, which in turn fosters innovation and invention. So whatever the challenges we face, it's better to tackle them with an optimistic bent, confident that nothing is insurmountable given enough will and effort. So optimism is the key. And why is optimism the key to innovation? It's because the optimist accepts that failure is an inevitable part of the pathway to success. Dyson, the entrepreneur, you know, the vacuum cleaner guy, claims he had 5,000 iterations of the vacuum cleaner before he went commercial. Edison had hundreds of attempts at getting the light bulb right. And ultimately, you know, we owe so much to him. So the combination is so, so powerful. But what do we do at the Centre for Optimism? We are very simple people, and I'm glad to have my friends, my chairman, Rob here, Jenny and Noireen and others who've joined us here today. We're very simple people. What we do is we ask people what makes you optimistic. Because at the other end, you've got the big guys, the Bill Gateses and the like, who say you should be optimistic because we've halved the malaria rate this century, or we've defeated world poverty. But the reality is each of us goes through our own crises, our own tragedies, in these days of COVID, our own business failures. So the key to what we do is to ask you what makes you optimistic. And I'm not going to speak at great length because I'm actually going to go around the table and ask Anna and Guy and Prashil and others what makes you optimistic. So let's get started with just a tiny little poll. Can everyone see that poll on their screen? It's what makes you optimistic, and there are several options there. You can tick as many as you like. So it's life experience, things will work out in the end, which is actually very ancient. It comes from a piece of writing 700 years ago. Family and friends, faith in God, gratitude, young people, innovation, and of course, chocolate. Although I recently gave a speech in New Zealand and the tax department there manipulated the answer, and the biggest answer was gin, which might surprise you given you think that gins are depressive, but it obviously helps the tax department there. So let's have a quick look at the answer we're getting.
Hello.
Life experience.
Listening to what makes me optimistic.
Jude, do you mind just muting Is that all right? There we are. Life experience, 64%. Things will work out in the end, 32. Mindset, 55. Family and friends, very central. Well, that's typical of Australia. Faith in God is down at 9%. Faith in the goodness of humankind, 18%. Gratitude, 50. Young people, 22. What do you expect in an innovation conference? 65%. And of course,
the statistician in me says there may be a little bit of bias given we're here for an innovation festival, but it's great to see it. It's neck and neck. Well, it's edging ahead.
Done.
I wasn't allowed to vote, so I would have probably picked something else. I do like innovation, but life experience or experiencing life to me is very important.
Absolutely. So look, what I'll do in the next 6 minutes is I want to put the case for optimism, because most of you will not have studied it at university or at school. Most of the research is relatively new. And then just share 4 of the habits of the optimist that may help you through both this festival and the next couple of weeks. So the case for optimism, number 1, is your health. In October, Harvard, the American military, and Boston released a major report on healthy longevity. That is, people living to the age of 85 with their marbles and their health. And the key trait for healthy longevity is not geography, it's not genetics, it's not sex, it's actually the trait of optimism. And it's in fact set off a whole lot of stuff in the US military, including exercises to increase the optimism of their workforce and the soldiers in the field. The second element of that health argument comes from the Mount Sinai medical system in the US and the American College of Cardiology, a study of 200,000 people over 50 years. The most significant protective factor against heart disease is, again, not geography, genetics, or wealth, it's optimism. The greatest predictor of recovery from a heart attack or angina is optimism. And there's evidence now that the same effects occur in dementia, in cancer, and in other places. And when we've got longer to speak, I can share some of the stories that come out of prison and elsewhere on exactly those questions. But for your health, it's absolutely crucial. For your love life, optimism is very important. The University of Michigan has actually done 2 major studies on the impact of being married or partnered to an optimist. And the evidence is that if you're married or partnered to an optimist, that you'll get some of the same protective factors as being optimistic yourself. So for those of you who are single or newly single, the best piece of dating advice I can give you is to slip in somewhere in that first drink or that first dinner, what makes you optimistic? And they'll look at you a bit weirdly, but it will save you from a life of misery. And those of you who are already partnered, you know, you've got 2 choices. Obviously, I hope you take the one that helps your partner find a few habits to make them just that little bit more optimistic too. Work-wise, it is central. As we said, one of the bizarre things about Australia is people interview people about their innovation, but actually don't interview them about the underpinning trait. You can't be innovative if you're not optimistic. So why are we interviewing people about their innovation rather than about what makes them optimistic and keeps them going on the days when they'd rather stop? Leadership at central. Dominic Barton, who was the head of McKinsey Worldwide, said to me, you know, you can read all these books and you can, 50, 60, 70 traits of the leader. But in fact, every great leader that Dominic Barton, the head of McKinsey, ever met anywhere in the world was infectiously optimistic. And it's not the rah-rah at the front of the room, right? It's not the big speech, it's the front. It's the person who can unlock the optimism in the team. And you think back to the days when we had the tea lady. When you think about the cheerful cleaner, Barton nailed it. Now, what's interesting, you'd all know Jeremy Johnson, who was the sensational CEO of Sovereign Hill, who then became head of the Australian Chamber of Commerce, chairman of Water Company. Funnily enough, I interviewed him on another project and he used almost the identical words to Dominic Barton, that leadership is about infectiously, optimistically empowering your team. And one you'd really like, because they've spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on customer research, and that's Disney and Coke. Iger, who's just retired from the leadership of Disney, has written a book, an autobiography with 10 principles of leadership. It's not a big guess to understand what's number one on his: infectious optimism as a leadership trait. Now, Rob, who's here, Rob Masters, who's here, is an expert in strategy and leadership. And Rob would say with strategy, it doesn't matter what the strategy is, as long as optimism is a part of it. And we did a huge research study, 400 strategy professionals in 22 countries. 90% said strategy must be an optimistic process. Only 60% of them had taken part in an optimistic strategy process. And would you believe it, Anna and co, only 20% of them measure optimism. How do you know you're being effective if you don't measure optimism in your stakeholders, your workers, and your customers? Resilience, people go nuts on resilience now. You know, millions of dollars are spent on programs to increase resilience in schools and in workplaces and the like. Jane Burns, who was the head of the Young and Well CRC, who is the expert in this space, says most of that's a waste of time. She would say people talk about resilience and tenacity, but when the chips are down, when you really feel like quitting, it's optimism that pulls you through. Now, I could go on, but today's a launch day, and today's not the day for me to take you through all of the elements of the how or why of optimism. But I think there's a pretty clear case that optimism is important for your personal health, your family health, and for the success of your business. And particularly if you're an entrepreneur in the innovative space. I mean, I've got 1,000 quotes on it, but I have a friend who does mining for lithium in Argentina. And anyone who does business in Argentina has to be an optimist. But he would say to be an entrepreneur, it needs spades and spades of optimism. So let me give you 4 hints. And if I could do a little shout out to Jenny and Noireen, because they're working with me on Project Optimism. We're going to build a course for the world on the 14 habits of the optimist, and it's going to be free. But let me share 4 habits that you can take up today. Number 1 is smile like an optimist. So I look at the screen here, most people are smiling, and you know, it's a powerful part of your personality, but it's too easy to forget. You know, you get up in the morning and your teenagers are a bit grumpy, or, you know, you're feeling a bit bleary or the like, but that fake it till you make it notion of smiling at the family as you see them first up, of walking the streets and smiling at, you know, and as a mayor knows, you walk down through the supermarket, you've got to smile at everyone, but it's a lesson that everyone can take up, and too often we forget it, but it's a very easy habit. The second one is laugh like an optimist. We put up a video for today asking what the dress code would be, and we said, is it tracky dacks? Is it pajamas? Is it a coat and tie? Is it a beautiful dress? My dear friend who recorded the video for me, Ros Ben Moshe, who recovered from cancer and wrote about laughing her way at cancer, said, the dress code for AWISE is a smile. So laugh and smile and make it a habit every day to tell a joke. They are crucial. Then the other 2, I'd like, actually I'll share 4. I've got 2 minutes left, so I can do 30 seconds a habit. The third one is to change your greetings. So if you are saying in Australia, how are you? Have a think of the answer you typically get. And I've done it in Wodonga. I've walked through many shops and asked, how are you? The answer you get is not bad, or more often you get not too bad. What a waste of a question and an answer. And my view is, just try and change it a little bit to what's the best thing happening for you? Or what's good in your day? I did a radio interview in New Zealand 3 weeks ago, and the announcer is in fact the business coach of the All Blacks. And he said, I've got to shamelessly say I've been plagiarizing this bloke, Victor Perton, for a year. And I said, and what he does now in his business coaching is every meeting he goes into, they expect it of him, g'day, what's the best thing happening? So try that out. And try it out for a day. If it doesn't work, you get a refund on this speech. Number two is the counter of that. If someone says to you, how are you? What do you typically say? Good, terrific. In Australia, it sounds inauthentic. So my suggestion to you is to be a little bit theatrical and pause. Thanks for asking. Oh, I went to a really interesting launch this morning. The mayor spoke beautifully and Guy was terrific, or my kids made me breakfast in bed. Just something short, something sweet, but something that invites that next question. And then the other two habits I'd urge on you. Number one is a gratitude journal. You've probably all heard of the gratitude journal. You've thought, oh God, you know, is it worth doing? I did an event in a prison and a young murderer had come and he still looked a bit troubled at the end of the event. And I said, why did you come? And he looked at me, and he's a big guy, you know, and muscles out to here. And, you know, I knew who he killed, etc. And he looks down at me and he says, well, the guy in the cell next to me came to your last workshop. And since then, he meditates once a day. He keeps a gratitude journal and he reads me one page of your book every day. And he said, if I come to your workshop, you'd give me a copy of the book. So of course I gave him a copy of the book straight away. But the principle was that the other prisoner had learnt, you know, to keep a gratitude. And the medical evidence around this, and it's quite huge now, is that keeping a gratitude journal, 3 things that were good, writing at the end of the day. The trick with it is first thing in the morning, don't listen to the news. Sitting on the toilet, having a cup of coffee, read what you were grateful for yesterday. So for the girls, you know, it might be a beautiful journal. For the blokes, a leathery journal. But the trick is 3 things a day and read it first thing in the morning. And there I mentioned the meditation word. Meditation or prayer, few times a week, a few minutes a week. The medical evidence, and ABC Catalyst actually repeated it about 4 months ago. It actually thickens the frontal portion of your brain, which is where happiness and joy comes from. So this notion of brain plasticity, a little bit of meditation or a little bit of prayer a few times a week can utterly change the way your brain works and the way you react to others. But look, that's enough from me in a launch event because, you know, typically when I do it in prison, the guys have got nowhere to go and so we can spend 2 hours together. Or I did the same thing with the tax department in New Zealand, and we've created a cohort of New Zealand tax department optimists. So all my Kiwi friends hate me now because they actually love a depressed and anxious tax department, not an optimistic can-do tax department. So Guy, look, I think I'm going to I will hand back to you, but we've got to ask our panelists that question. So starting with you, Anna, the question is, what makes you optimistic?
Talking to our youngest people. One of the things that I committed to when I became mayor was going out and meeting with all of our schools, and I used to ask them what's the thing that they love doing, and they used to say everything that was in Albury. And now they say everything in Wodonga, and for me, proudest moment because it's shifted a culture. So talking to young people, hearing it, no filter, they give it to you straight.
That is fantastic. Looking at life through the eyes of a child, it's dynamic. And Prashil, I mean, you've been teaching older children. What makes you optimistic?
Good question. I also have 3 young children as well. So, you know, family and the future for my family and my children and their generations to come is what I certainly believe. The work that I do today and the impact and the legacy that leaves for our future generation is what I believe in, optimism and innovation that goes with that as well.
And Guy, what makes you optimistic?
Well, Victor, you know, that's a different answer with every breath I take. I seem to find that I was thinking this morning, are you going to hold it together? Because you're like that excited child and you're watching them going everywhere. Absolutely everything makes me optimistic, Victor. I think I'm just a bundle of optimism. But today, it's just knowing that the days are longer, that spring's here, that the flowers and blossom are coming out. I'm really optimistic that tomorrow's a minute and a half, 2 minutes longer. I love it.
Kelly, what makes you optimistic?
The collective wisdom and the collective insights that doing activities like this and doing the festival really have, you know, reinvigorated me. I'm an extrovert, and so I need to be with people and I need to exchange ideas. So that optimism that, yes, like spring, we're emerging out of something, and I think you know, we're coming back into our humanity. And for me, it's looking about how humanity shapes technology. So, you know, it's great to be able to be with like-minded people and keep pursuing these, a society we want.
That is one of the great habits of the optimist. When I asked Bill George, you know, the author of True North, you know, that great business book, I asked him what makes him optimistic. It was exactly the same as you. He said, being surrounded by positive people, what a blessing. And that's
yes,
the guru of leadership. Jeff-Kerr-Bell, what makes you optimistic?
You always make me optimistic, Victor. But
I want to know something else.
Absolutely, but look, I think all of the experiences I've had with various people through COVID and the resilience of people that are around, everyone's finding it tough and finding different experiences. But by and large, I think the resilience and the positivity in the way that people have really reached out to help people in this difficult time rather than sort of cocoon by and large, I think has been really, really enlightening and certainly generating a lot of optimism. So that's certainly for me at the moment. And being president of a soccer club and seeing things go south very quickly with a lot of different community sport, the support and optimism that we've shared with members and they've shared back has certainly keeps me and continues to be optimistic.
Fantastic. Now, Nikki, our robotics expert, what makes you optimistic?
Hi, Victor. Look, I have to say I live in Sassafras, so Kelly, I'm just up from you. And spring is here and I can feel it in the air, so I've got an extra little bounce in my step, but it's very windy up here, so we have to be careful of falling trees, but notwithstanding, I'll be going for my walk. Look, I think being in Victoria, you know, you're all aware of our lockdown here. I think what makes me optimistic is that by and large, people have done the right thing and we're pulling together as a community, which is very important. And I think going forward, we'll pull it together and we'll manage, and our economy will somehow right itself. I know there's a lot of doom and gloom about that, but I'm optimistic that everyone works hard, we'll pull through.
Fantastic. Robert Masters, he covered journalism in Canberra under 10 prime ministers. So how you can maintain optimism in the face of that, and now the king of crisis communications, what makes you optimistic?
Oh, Victor, thank you for that. People who make positive change, like Anna and Guy and Kelly, they're making a great contribution to society, and that's uplifting people. And that's what we need in Australia today, but we've always had it. It's just a matter of groups like this getting together more and more and making that change and instilling it in the younger generations.
Fantastic. Now, Geoff Allen, you've just started a new business. Can you unmute and tell us what makes you optimistic about starting a new business?
Yeah, thanks, Victor. Look, it's just the ability to follow passion for me. And I think we all, you know, have passions, but often we invest in activities or people or things that aren't necessarily aligned with those passions. And for me, it comes down to, yeah, absolutely being able to, you know, really express that passion authentically.
Fantastic. And so what I'd like to do is to ask Prashil and Anna, in particular in their work, what are they seeing around innovation? You know, what is inspiring them? What's the next step? And you're all welcome to join in. We've got a chat box on the side. We are all going to be great friends out of this, because as I said, surround yourself with optimists. We are the support team for each other. So Prashil, you haven't had the chance to speak at length. Tell us, you know, you came out of TAFE, you were in Wodonga, you've now got this really fantastic business, VetAssess. What is it that's driving you and what's changing?
Yeah, thank you, Victor. Look, I guess what's keeping me busy and perhaps what's keeping me energized and focused is the work that I do for the organisation that I work for, VetAssess, has a range of different services in which we support the work of government and non-government agencies at the national level as well as international level to help create change or present life-changing opportunities for our, I guess, end users. And some of those works that we are doing is using innovation, is using technology. But of late, what's really inspiring is that the agility in which we are doing and the pace that we are working in is actually, and through technology, is presenting remarkable speed to market opportunities. Case in point, you know, when COVID came into effect, the pandemic sort of come into effect here in Melbourne alone, or just in Victoria, decisions that would take forever at a government level had to be made within hours. You know, I'm talking like it's fast tracking, it's cutting red tape, it's removing all the obstacles and making decisions here and now. So with these sorts of change and pandemics, you know, we are making faster decisions. But equally, are we using technology at the same time in such a way that we've never used before? Technology has been with us for a long time, but it's front and center, even more, in fact, more paramount today than ever been in the last 20 odd years. And certainly we are all embracing technology. We are all lifting our digital literacy. We are all finding ways and working smarter, not harder. We are still running. I've been working from in lockdown sort of provisions for the last 6 months now. And, you know, we've been able to still transition our organisation. And we have a staff of 200 people, all seamlessly working remotely and still carry on our business activity, even under these challenging timeframes. So certainly from an innovation point of view, technology has always been there. It's what we're doing with it now that makes more of the difference. And I think that's where using, turning our lens to technology being an important feature and fabric of our business model is just as paramount that it was before, but more importantly today, and will become more paramount going forward as well. Communication platforms, learning platforms, the introduction of digital badgings, and you know, there's a number of things that I could go on to, Victor. So, but I'm just inspired by the possibilities in which change presents, as well as the enablement of what technology presents to organisations, big, large, or small, whichever way you look at it, in terms of being able to navigate the landscape in months and years to come.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is inspiring. We're doing a job with a thing called the Nelson Mandela Youth Leadership Summit, which used to be in a dusty hall in Shepparton. We've now got kids from Africa and the United States and elsewhere as people beam in from all around the world. But one of the things I learned on Monday is that in regions like Wodonga and, you know, both East and West and South, is that there's a disconnect in the workforce. That you've actually got a very high level of vacancy for jobs, but you've also got a higher level of unemployment. So I'm wondering if you, Anna, you, Prashil, Kelly and Margot, if you want to hook in, you know, how can we, with micro-credentials, short training, better use of digital, solve this gap of both employment and unemployment? What do you reckon, Anna?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I spend a lot of time out in companies, but I also spend a lot of time in my community, and the disconnect sometimes between people's perception of what jobs are out there and what people can do. And I still maintain, and Prashil, we did this years ago, where you've got to get right back in early into the education sector to inform that better, so that you link the companies to the potential employees. Because, you know, we're seeing new industries come here, we're seeing new technologies come here. We've just had V2 Foods move here. Now that's the research and manufacturing company for Hungry Jacks for Southeast Asia Pacific. They've come to Wodonga. You know, so that means 160 jobs in, you know, high-end research and technology. So those things are coming here, but how do you connect our youth and their thinking that they can actually work in the place where they've grown up to the worldwide opportunities that a company like that one, just as one as an example, presents? And, you know, for me, that's a really important thing that we've got to keep doing, is connecting those people. And don't lose the gems on the way. You know, it's great to have, and I love change and I love innovation, but you shouldn't lose the good bits on the way, because sometimes there's gold in some of the older ways we've done things. Doesn't mean we shouldn't keep challenging them, but there's some real gold there as well.
Prashil, can you take us further with what you're doing?
Look, I think what we've been doing in this space is trying to sort of make learning as accessible and as readily available. We've traditional way of learning, you know, you've got your full qualifications, whether they're certificate level, diploma or bachelor level. A bit of work that I've been doing in some countries that don't have sophisticated education systems or frameworks, namely in places like, you know, Philippines, Vietnam, and those sort of markets, but they all have a common problem, and that's trying to find people who have the required skill to work in their country and neighbouring countries. For them to get qualifications, they don't know what the piece of paper means. They don't have a sophisticated, so qualification frameworks also change between countries and so on, but they have a common language called an occupational standard. So a chef or a logistics worker or whatever it might be need to have these common skills or traits. And therefore, it's not necessary qualification. It could be an occupational standard, or what we've now called it in our sort of sector is micro-credentialing. There's a series of bits or series of credentials that make up someone's proficiency in being able to do a particular task and job. And it's breaking down the enormity of learning in bite-sized chunks that allows individuals to at least learn and grow, and also change course should they need to, without being forced down to go down a particular pathway. We've just recently done this, just going back to jobs and opportunities and skills. Absolutely, it's demystifying where these, what these jobs and opportunities present. I think there's still a missing piece with the youth in being understanding opportunities in terms of these jobs and the opportunities it creates going forward. I've also been involved with World Skills International, and not just looking at current skills, but also looking at future and emergent skills, Industry 4.0 skills as well. And just been absolutely inspired by, and this is the Skills Olympic, in terms of the world coming together and competing to be the best in that particular trade or in that particular skill, and competing with countries globally every second year at an international stage to look at you know, who is the best in what it is that they're doing. And that's the world nations who are absolutely investing in skills. And you've got massive organizations like Samsung and Dwell and a whole range of different sponsors. The reason why they do sponsor them is because they know the talent that they can access through those competition is just at their doorstep. And so they sponsor and they get these individuals employed. But just to talk about a project that I've been involved with the Victorian government, particularly supporting Victorians working for Victoria, and also Victorians returning to work or returning to offices. There are some initiatives that are currently promoted by the Victorian government, whereby very seamlessly we had to create skill sets, micro-credential or micro-learning, whereby individuals have been displaced and trying to match the population to learn about some of these new skills, but also match them with employment, whereby the industry that are currently experiencing enormous demand and can't keep up with meeting those sort of the skill level or the talent to actually keep up with serving their obviously stakeholders or consumers. There is Working for Victoria initiative, whereby when we first started this project with the Victorian government in April, we had like 2 or 3 courses. It's got now over 40 courses, short courses, micro-credential courses. Individuals actually learn through self-directed. They can actually get a skill and they get a digital badge, and they can also get matched with an employer who's actually looking for that skill as well. So there are initiatives currently at play at a Victorian government level. And these are opportunities not just in metropolitan area. These are initiatives that are all around regional Victoria and all around the state, including Wodonga and other places as well. So certainly there are those initiatives that are currently at play, but it's about creating that awareness, Vector, in my opinion. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I know a lot of that I don't know, I think. Kelly, how about you wind up this question? And then we've got an open mic, because we've got lots and lots of intelligent people in this room. So we'd like you to sort of either throw up your hand or throw something into the box and say, I've got something to say, because we want to make it open mic after Kelly's spoken.
Thank you. And, you know, there's so many elements there, but what sprung to mind was something I heard of a couple of years ago, and I think has been advancing, is we don't know what we don't know. And jumping into a career or a work environment that you don't know is really daunting, particularly for young people or particularly for people who've been out of work. And we know we've got great need in care sector, and it's just been exacerbated by this environment now for disability care and for aged care. But disability is a real passion of mine, with having my brother as an intellectually disabled big brother who lives in a community house, and the support that he gets from his team of carers is just fantastic. But how do we encourage more people into that workforce when it's quite a daunting, normally just getting a new job, but be in an environment you really aren't comfortable with? So there was a VR experience of being able to go in for a couple of different training scenarios of coming into somebody's home, going through the process of cooking a meal with them, and interacting. And that was just like, you know, wow. And so the ability to add different levels of engagement, utilising some technology. There's also been some VR and AR training regarding manufacturing that I've seen down at Deakin Uni. They've got this amazing 3D, amazing engagement that you are going into the factory. So something that is dangerous or something that's uncomfortable and different, being able to put yourself in that environment through a digital, and that's where there's a lot of new things coming around digital twins and the like. I really think that's really positive, and that there's you know, some really creative people who are looking at these issues. And then of course, then you could tie that to a micro-credential. I've gone through, I mean, you think of it now, all of the different WorkSafe, you go through and do some online training, particularly now with COVID, making sure you've got a WorkSafe environment to return, particularly in the manufacturing. You know, all of those elements are part of that micro-credentialing. And so if you can undertake something like a virtual training scenario, then, you know, it's about that competencies. And, you know, I really think being able to mix those things together, and really, you know, in the end, it has a real human outcome of connecting people. And just the other element is the ability to connect people directly to each other. So the NDIS is an amazing policy shift. I'm a passionate believer of it, and I've lived through navigating the system, which is not easy, but it is really a significant, biggest policy and social shift that we've seen as a country. Is it right? Is it working perfectly? No, because it's change, and you are dealing with market, you know, moving into a market, but the ability to democratize that, and seeing organisations like Clickability, who built out a TripAdvisor for disability services. So, and trying to shift those people's belief about, well, I actually am a consumer. I can make a conscious choice about what my service provider should be. So I think there's some really interesting ways that, you know, particularly in the disability space, and looking at being able to fulfill those work requirements, qualifications and experience, but through a digital experience as that transition phase. That's what I think is really exciting. So
I'm excited. So I better throw back to the man of the moment, Guy, to take us through the last 5 to 10 minutes of formal proceedings before we go to that really comfortable, casual conversation.
Thanks, Victor, and thanks everyone so far for sharing your thoughts, and more importantly to all of you sitting there listening and absorbing our thoughts and our energy. Victor, I was very interested to hear about micro-credentials and the need to align people with the skills they need and the jobs they want to do. You will recall I was recently talking about Ikigai, and excuse me, but I'm going to share my screen again really briefly because I don't like looking at my own face. I used to, last year I spoke of people, purpose and place at the Innovation Summit. And it's without those three things, you don't really have innovation or you don't have progress. And I used to think that I was really passionate about helping people achieve their goals and leveraging technology and helping them navigate that. But actually, I'm more realizing I'm about people helping realize what's their reason for being, what's their passion. You know, so if we want to innovate, if we want to progress, we've got to start with ourselves. You know, what do I love doing? What am I good at? What can I get paid for? Most importantly, what does the world need? And that's not a pressure point, but this concept of Ikigai. Where do I fit in the world? How can I add value? I was listening this morning, was it Colin, the optimism note that you shared from the US, and in talking about practicing a few things in life, practicing gratitude, practicing the art of paying it forwards and giving back every day. If we take a moment and reflect, we can find out what it is that really drives us. And you know, I've watched people come in and out, and I know a number of the people in the room. I think we all need to consider, you know, what is our Ikigai, what is our purpose, and then seek to attract ourselves to others that share those purposes or can help us fulfill or live them. Really, I don't have much more to say on the program itself, other than, again, I'd really like to thank Victor, Anna and Prashil for joining us to have a discussion about the link between optimism and innovation. We didn't really do that, but it's absolute that that is true. And I would like to also, again, really thank all of our sponsors and supporters for making this possible. Frankly, you know, between the professional organisations supporting it and a number of you in the room and a number that aren't in the room, this wouldn't happen through one person's efforts. Everyone is collectively the wind beneath each other's wings, like a bird flying in formation, or like the peloton in a riding group. It's not the person out the front that wins the race. It's not the person out the front that makes it happen. So I'm super excited that we're doing it again this year. There were various roadblocks, but they're just hurdles. Thank you, Victor. To open up the mic, actually, I see Lubosh has come on film here, and many of us locals will know Lubosh. There you go, with his infectious smile. Lubosh has just returned from many months on a sabbatical over in Europe, and you will hear of his European origin. He's done some amazing things in here in Wodonga. Whatever he does with passion and purpose. My favourite of his things that he did was the Daily Scoop. I'm an avid fan of ice cream. And I put it to you that he made the best ice cream, not only in Wodonga, because there's only one great store, but probably in Australia, if not around the world. He works with children for educating, teaches people to code, has plenty to say about politics. Lubosh, what is it that makes you optimistic?
Oh, what makes me optimistic? I would reverse the question, what doesn't really? So optimism is probably one of the things that keeps people going. I was kind of preparing to talk about micro-credentials, but you put me into a different position. So let's talk about optimism instead. I'm in Melbourne at the moment, and I just heard that they're extending the lockdown for another 2 weeks, which is annoying because we've been in it for 4 weeks. And I've already been planning, and not just me, other people have been planning what they're gonna do when it finishes, because it was meant to finish on the 14th. Now it's finishing on the 28th. So there's 2 more weeks of lockdown. You know how bad it is. It's just, you can't go outside, you can't do anything. It is really annoying. So just this morning, I came late because I'm doing another course in Ericksonian therapy, and I had a very interesting session in that course this morning about, well, we're doing our own self-therapy, but basically it turned out to be very useful for me because I now know what I can do in these next 2 weeks. So it keeps me optimistic. Whatever comes as bad, you just turn it into something that you can use for some purpose. So I have another 2 weeks of doing something new. Sometimes you don't see what the situation can be positive in, really, but being in the lockdown, I have spent a lot of time learning new stuff. I have spent a lot of time doing cooking. I have joined a group that does food rescues. So we actually deliver food to people who cook for the homeless and stuff like that. It's really, you wouldn't normally think of doing that. I have no car at the moment, so I cycle everywhere, and you have 1 hour a day. This is how bad it is. You can go out for 1 hour for exercise. So I make the most of it. I do 1 hour cycling most days. I go to places, either I go pick up food, or I go deliver, or I go and see my daughters that live just on that, you can only go 5 kilometers. That is bad as well, because they're just a little bit further. So we have to meet. They go for a walk, I go for a bike ride. So it's really great. I'm telling you, this lockdown is fabulous.
Lebosh, and you're always one to make the most of a situation, and I'm always interested to hear your words on it. Where will be the first place you'll go to when you get to leave Melbourne? Will you be coming home to Albury-Wodonga? Would you call this
yeah, I'll go to Albury-Wodonga, probably be a stopover on my way to, I have previously visited an eco-village in Gosford that I really want to see, and I have some people there that want me to work with them on building, they're building a lot of interesting houses with natural building techniques. So I want to spend a few weeks there. So I'm gonna travel there. I was planning to go there during these school holidays in September, but that's not gonna happen. Mm-hmm. So it's gonna be before Christmas sometime.
Yeah. That's the biggest challenge, isn't it, Lebosh, is the uncertainty that, is placed around this cloud of, I don't know, pessimism, as Victor would say. We have this cloud or fog of pessimism, and we all need to find within ourselves this lighthouse of optimism. As you'll all see, Lebosh, like me, likes the shiny objects. He does many things. He's been involved in building and teaching tiny houses, as I said, making ice cream, teaching people to code, many things. If you don't mind, Lebosh, I'm going to come back to another educator. Yeah. I know Jeff, you're an educator, and you have been educating for many years in the private space, and really focused on teaching people to use tools. What are your thoughts on optimism and innovation, and how we can move forwards?
Yeah, thanks, Guy. Yeah, well, I'm naturally an optimistic person anyway, so that's so just generally optimistic about life. So that probably helps. But in terms of my business and what I've been doing for nearly 20 years, obviously COVID, the whole thing, like everybody, and I was listening to what Prashil said, everyone's had to change what they're doing. And I remember when I was so I do live in Wodonga, but I work in Melbourne a lot, particularly in local government. So I remember when I came back from doing some work at a council, came back here, drove back here, and then a lockdown happened. It was like, well, the restrictions happened, and it was like, what am I going to do? And I was thinking, I remember the thought going through, oh, this is going to be hard. How am I going to do this? Like, can I shift things to online? And I remember thinking a week and thinking, oh, geez, I don't know if I'm up for this. As you can see, I'm an old bloke. And then I had one of my clients ring up and say, are you going to move your stuff online? And I went, yeah, of course. And then it was like crazy for, you know, a couple of weeks of moving everything online, which I was able to do. And now I look back, and what was, you know, looking pretty difficult is now a lot easier. And I actually ran a webinar yesterday for the Business Wodonga, actually. And I made the point then that what has actually happened really is it's opened up for regional businesses, has opened up, I actually made the point, it's opened up the state, it's opened up Australia, it's opened up the world. So for people now sitting here doing stuff online like I am, it's like, well, actually, don't just worry about, you know, regional. You can think about state, you can think Australia, you can think the world. So yeah, that's what's happening for me. It's been quite amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see in your background there, you've proudly got your degrees and diplomas. So micro credentials aren't necessarily a thing that you need, but you do. You teach micro knowledge every day. Yes, in what you do. True. Teach people about time management and focus and leveraging tools like, you know, OneNote and Outlook to take their life back and really achieve things.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Prashil, have you got any closing thoughts or comments?
No, look, Guy and team, I think it's really important to be having these conversations, and I think very important that now's the time to really foster these dialogues, and as a community, as a unit, to get together to sort of foster what innovation and opportunities present in a type of pandemics or crises or the like. But it's good to hear that, and Jeff, and to your point, that, you know, the world's your oyster, and certainly technology does present that. You know, we can be at any point, anywhere in the world, and still communicate and collaborate. So, and I think probably just adding the word on collaboration, I think collaboration is key. Fostering a community and having a network is just as important, but then having well, there you go, engage and collaborate is just as important. So, no, look, thanking everyone for the opportunity for the dialogue and comments, but look forward to the future sessions as well.
Hello, how are you?
Well, thank you. Very well.
That's good.
I won't pause and say thank you for asking. I've been at a wonderful webinar, but that's what I'll do next time I see you face to face.
Yeah.
Mr. Charlesworth, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm slowly recovering.
Yeah. But Peter, I know you're a budding photographer. I often see you at many of these events that we go to. You'll be interested to know we're looking at Indi Voices of Optimism, a program which will celebrate optimism and have some expressions of optimism, where we'll encourage people to, through photography, sculpture, poem, etc., to submit to a competition and express optimism. Now, I think you may submit some photographs, but also with that mic, you may even be our official poem reader.
Yeah.
What makes you optimistic, Peter?
Empathy.
Empathy.
Yeah, I think it's a complex question. I think where society generally, particularly online, everyone's kind of geared towards pessimism. And I think if this was a forum of complaining about what was wrong with everything, you know, we might see some different numbers. I think it's really refreshing to see a group of people talking about the positive side. And I think you have to have a dose of questions. You know, it can't all be sunshine and roses, but I think people who... Costa Georgiadis, the gardening guy, he epitomises it that for me, optimism. He has a glow about him and a magnetism. And I think if we can tap into that side of ourselves more through our businesses, through our relationships, through that empathy, and he has amazing empathy. I met him when he was in Albury, and it was just this old soul with a warm glow and on the front foot in a positive way. I thought, you know, everyone could learn from a guy like this. I think he encapsulates optimism. That person like Costa, I don't know if some of you may not know Costa, but he's the guy with the massive beard, the black hair. Is a real character. Yeah, I think empathy, I think having the capacity to connect with others from their point of view and reflect their needs. I think that's a big part of it for me.
What about Henry Dobson? What about you, Henry? You haven't said anything yet.
Are you there, Henry?
Yes.
Looking like you're on your back porch in Benalla.
Yeah,
it's my front porch. Actually,
okay, porch, beautiful.
Beautiful. Look at that.
Lovely. I like the way you show your neighbour's garden. Where's your lawn? Show me your lawn.
That's the garden bed which Mother has put me in charge of maintaining, whilst I have escaped Melbourne, of course, during these times, and have moved back to Benalla, back to the family farm. So I have a bit of gardening to attend to. But yeah, fantastic conversation, this one. I've really enjoyed the hour. And hearing all of the different perspectives and words on the importance of optimism and what makes me optimistic. There's been a lot of sort of reference to kind of collaboration and sort of humanity, but and whilst I also agree on all of what was said there, I also think technology makes me very optimistic because it empowers us to tackle global problems on a global scale, and because of course technology operates at that level, it gives us an incredible sort of outreach and an ability to really change the world on that scale. So ironically, although I still work in the ethics of tech, which is looking at the darker sides and the risks of technology and where technology can go wrong, I think combined with the optimism and the humanity of who and what we are as human beings, augmented by technology, I think will make the world in the future an even more wonderful and remarkable place, so long as it's ethical. You know, we need to install ethical thinking into the entire technological domain, and I think if we do that, then we've got a very good chance at creating what you might call a utopia. But
I was wondering how you stayed optimistic in the field you're in, which is AI and ethics. It must be challenging, the same as it's challenging for our psychologists and counsellors to listen to people's challenges and yet still learn how to take the best from those. So that's great. Really appreciate you sharing that. We have got a couple more, and I see, Jeff, you've been sitting there avidly listening. Have you got a moment to share with us what makes you optimistic? Jeff?
Which Jeff?
Oh, Jeff-Kerr-Bell. Is there two Jeff?
Well, Jeff already shared what makes him optimistic, but he is at the cutting edge of getting youth through the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah. So as Victor says, I mean, I'm president of a soccer club, and while all the clubs around us were basically shutting up shop and saying, you know, that's it, we can't do anything, or a lot of them. That's not, to be fair, some of them haven't. As a new president of a brand new committee coming in last November. And obviously being a natural optimist and being on the advisory board for the centre, I couldn't help but think there's a different way. So we found, and it's lucky for regional because they actually got to play some soccer before everything was shut down. But in the metro areas in Melbourne, we weren't able to do that. But we did what we could. And I sort of basically challenged my board to say, what can we do? Let's focus on that, not what can't we? And connected with Melbourne City, we're a city club, and organised a competition. So our coaches engaged the members. I challenged all our coaches to say, can you keep having virtual training sessions, even if it's just to talk to the kids every week? So we had a lot of activities like that engaged the membership. On the back of the fact that we had to send out a note saying, well, we spent a whole bunch of money anticipating a season and now we can't give you 100% of your fees back. And look, by and large, we've had some fantastic response from members. The prize for the members for the kids that did the competition, and the Melbourne City one, was a video call with one of their Melbourne City Football Club heroes. And we were fortunate enough to get one of the young rising women's team stars to go on a video call, which most of our girls were keen to connect with as well. So I think the positivity and the optimism that we injected into those kids about the fact that, they can still do things during the shutdown. They can still participate in the game that they love. They can still, get enthusiastic about it and inject a bit of optimism has really helped. And as a club that sort of, we got involved to try and turn it around because we saw it going the wrong way. That has actually been a massive opportunity. And I think this is the times when optimistic leadership is so important, when all around them, the classic saying, when all around you are losing your heads, it's best to keep yours. And I think optimism helps leadership do that. And I'm pleased to say that there's a lot of positivity we've managed to inject and get back as a new committee on the back of that. So there's not many opportunities where you get to influence the lives of better part of 500 kids, and that's the way I see our job as a board.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Jeff. And I think on that note, I'd love to have tea and scones around so the last dozen of us could sit here and chat away to our heart's content. But I'm sure we've all got things to do. I appreciate you all coming along. I always just want to remind people to celebrate, engage, and collaborate. Now, that was last year. This year, we've actually made it reflect, adapt, and thrive. And I think really that's what this time of COVID and lockdown has given us the opportunity to do, is to reflect. And it's now up to us to choose how we adapt so we may thrive. Victor, thanks again.
All of us, Guy, you're a gutsy bloke who persists, and you've persisted in this on a new platform. And on behalf of each of us and everyone in your community, it's a huge thank you for you and your persistence and resilience and hard work.
Thanks. My pleasure. I'm looking forward to seeing the fruits of the labour. Planting the trees only the first part. All right.
Well, that's a huge thank you to Guy Rowson, to AWISE, to the Mayor Anna Speedie, to Prashil and everyone who participated. We hope you loved it. At the Centre for Optimism, we are absolutely honoured to be a supporter of AWISE, and we hope you get engaged in AWISE and the Centre for Optimism. Have a great day.